Okay, so we're always talking about those big things for your health, right? Like,
Hmm.
diet and exercise and making sure you get enough sleep.
Right.
But what if I told you there's like this whole world inside you, this
Hmm.
microscopic world, and there's this one tiny resident there?
Okay.
It's a bacterium. And it could be like secretly controlling everything,
Oh, wow.
from how much you weigh to how your body deals with sugar, even how sharp your brain stays as you get older,
Mm.
and even like how well you fight off infections.
Oh, really?
We're going deep today into this like tiny powerhouse. It's called Akkermansia Muciniphila.
Akkermansia.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one that I think a lot of people are starting to hear about more and more.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating to me about it is like how much influence it seems to have on your body.
Yeah, and that's where I think this deep dive is going to be really interesting for you.
For sure.
Especially if you've ever thought about like how to manage your weight better or keep your blood sugar stable,
Hmm.
or if you're just curious about like setting yourself up for good brain health down the road, long term.
Yeah.
Understanding this bacteria, this Akkermansia, could be like a secret weapon
Look,
almost.
shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah, so our mission today is pretty simple.
Yeah.
We want to find out exactly what Akkermansia muciniphila is, why it's considered like this VIP for your overall health, and how it
Ah.
actually like interacts with your body and all the amazing things it does.
It does a lot.
We've got some good stuff to cover today, so let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, let's introduce this Akkermansia muciniphila.
Okay. So Akkermansia muciniphila, this isn't like some rare bacteria that only a few people have.
Right.
It's actually a really important part of a healthy gut.
Okay.
So in healthy people, it can actually make up like 3 to 5% of all the bacteria living in your gut.
Wow, 3 to 5%.
Yeah,
That might not sound like a lot, but it sounds like it does a lot.
it does a lot.
And, its name kind of gives us a hint, right? Muciniphila.
Yeah.
So one of its main jobs is working with mucins. Now, for those of you who maybe haven't heard that word before, mucins are these proteins that make up that intestinal mucus layer.
Right.
So think of it like the lining inside your gut.
Yeah, a slippery lining. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And Akkermansia is really important for keeping that mucus layer healthy and at the right thickness,
Okay.
which is really important because that layer acts as a barrier.
A barrier against what? Like, what's it keeping out?
So it's your first line of defense against bad stuff,
Okay.
like pathogens.
Okay.
So think like bad bacteria, viruses, other things that you don't want in your system.
Right. Things you don't want in your gut.
Exactly. And it's not just like a passive shield either.
Okay.
It also helps to create like the perfect environment for all the good microorganisms in your gut to grow.
So it's like setting the stage for all the good guys
Exactly.
and keeping the bad guys out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And what's really interesting is Akkermansia is constantly working.
Okay.
It actually helps to renew that mucus layer, which is super important for a healthy gut. And it can even provide food for other good bacteria in there.
Wow.
So scientists actually look at Akkermansia levels as a sign of how balanced things are in your gut. Like if your Akkermansia levels are good, it's usually a good sign for your overall gut health.
So it's like the homeostasis they talk about?
Exactly. Yeah, the balance.
Yeah. Okay, so we're kind of getting a picture that this mucus layer is pretty important.
It is so important.
Yeah. So can you explain, like, why should we care so much about how thick it is and the health of it?
Well, think of it this way, that mucus layer is like the frontline security for your whole body.
Okay.
It's like a physical barrier that stops all those potentially harmful things we talked about
Right.
from actually touching the cells that line your intestines.
Okay.
And remember, a huge part of your immune system is actually in your gut.
Right.
So if you have a strong barrier there, it helps to prevent your immune system from being triggered all the time,
Okay.
which means less inflammation.
Right. Because you don't want your immune system, like, on high alert constantly.
Exactly. You want it to be balanced.
Yeah.
And Akkermansia is really involved in making sure that barrier is renewed and refreshed all the time.
Okay.
It's a really cool process, actually,
Yeah.
because the bacteria, they eat the mucins,
Mm-hmm.
but when they do that, they actually tell the cells in your gut lining to make more mucus.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a win-win.
Yeah. Everybody benefits.
Exactly. And like we touched on earlier, this whole process of Akkermansia eating the mucus, it has these other ripple effects too.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, I think. So
Yeah.
you mentioned like multifaceted roles.
Yes.
Can we dig into that a little bit? How does Akkermansia help us out beyond just managing the mucus?
So one of the key things is that when Akkermansia breaks down those mucins, it produces these byproducts.
Okay.
And these byproducts are actually good for you.
Okay.
Things like short-chain fatty acids.
Oh, we hear about those all the time.
Yeah, you do things like butyrate,
Yes.
and then oligosaccharides as well.
Okay, so these aren't just like waste products.
No, they're super beneficial.
They do something for us.
They do a lot.
Okay.
So, for example, they can be a really important energy source for the cells lining your colon,
Okay.
which is essential for keeping them healthy.
Right.
But beyond that, they can actually feed other beneficial bacteria in your gut.
So it's like this little ecosystem in there.
It is.
Everyone's helping each other out.
Exactly, yeah. A symbiotic relationship.
That's so cool.
So, for instance, you have bacteria like Faecalibacterium prosnitzi
Okay.
and Rosboria.
Mm-hmm.
These are both really well known for producing short-chain fatty acids
Okay.
that have anti-inflammatory effects, and they help you to resist those harmful bacteria.
Okay.
And they actually benefit from the environment that Akkermansia creates.
Wow.
So by supporting Akkermansia, you're actually indirectly supporting a whole community of microbes.
It's like a chain reaction.
It is.
Ah.
That's amazing.
So there are a lot of benefits there.
What else does it do? You mentioned that it helps to seal the intestinal wall? Yes. So this is super important for overall health.
Okay.
So remember we talked about that intestinal barrier.
Right.
Ideally, you want it to be selectively permeable.
Okay.
So you want nutrients to be able to pass through into your bloodstream.
Right.
But you want to keep the harmful stuff contained in your gut.
Right. Keep the bad stuff in.
Exactly. And in conditions like obesity, research has actually shown that Akkermansia can help to strengthen that barrier.
Okay.
It does this through a couple of mechanisms.
Okay.
So first, by producing those short-chain fatty acids
Huh?
through some specific pathways.
Okay.
And second, it can actually directly influence the proteins that form the tight junctions.
Oh, yeah, those tight junctions. I've heard of those.
Yeah.
What are those again?
So those are like the tiny seals between the cells that line your intestines.
Okay.
So they're basically making sure that nothing leaks out in between the cells.
Gotcha. So nothing gets through where it's not supposed to.
Exactly. They're like the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And Akkermansia has been shown to have a good effect on proteins like Claudin-3, which helps to reinforce those seals even more.
Okay, so less leaky gut.
Less leaky gut, exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about what's in your gut, but like keeping it all in the right place.
Exactly. Yeah, containment is key.
So you mentioned something else too about its impact on the endocannabinoid system.
Yes, this is a fascinating area.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
So Akkermansia can actually influence the production of certain compounds. Like one example is 2-oleoyl glycerol.
Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce that again.
No, that's okay.
But what does it do?
So basically these compounds can affect the synthesis of something called GLP-1.
GLP-1, now that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Isn't that involved in blood sugar control?
It is a key hormone
Okay.
that helps to regulate blood sugar levels.
Okay.
So it helps your body release more insulin when your blood sugar is high.
Uh-huh.
It slows down how quickly food empties from your stomach.
Okay.
And it can even impact your appetite. And what's really interesting is that some of the new weight management medications
Yeah.
actually mimic the effects of GLP-1.
Oh, wow. So this is something our body can do naturally.
Exactly. And Akkermansia plays a role in that.
So our gut bacteria can actually help us with blood sugar control.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So it just shows you how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about all the good things.
Yes.
What happens when things aren't so good? What happens when Akkermansia levels are low?
Yeah, so unfortunately when Akkermansia levels are low, it's been linked to a bunch of different health problems.
Okay.
So we're talking about things like metabolic disorders,
Okay.
like obesity, type 2 diabetes,
Mm.
but also things like inflammatory bowel disease.
Oh, wow.
And antopy, which is like a tendency towards allergies,
Okay.
and even PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome.
That's a lot of different things.
It is a pretty wide range.
Is there something that connects all of those?
Yeah, so a lot of times the common link seems to be that thinning of the mucus layer.
Right, that we talked about. So it's not doing its job as well.
Right, it's not as good at being a barrier.
And that's where the problems start.
Yeah, because then things that should stay in your gut
Uh-huh.
can leak out into your bloodstream.
And that causes inflammation.
Exactly. It can lead to something called endotoxemia, which is basically when you have higher levels of these lipopolysaccharides, LPS, in your blood.
Okay.
And this can trigger your immune system and cause low-grade chronic inflammation.
So it's like your body's always on edge.
Yeah, kind of like a constant low-level alarm signal.
And that's not good for us long term.
No, it's not. It's been linked to a lot of different health problems.
Okay.
And some research even suggests that at least half of all metabolic disorders might be connected to this endotoxemia.
Wow, 50%.
Yeah, it's a significant number.
So that little imbalance in our gut can have these huge effects on our health.
Exactly. It's all
Yeah.
connected.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you break down a little more why a messed up gut barrier leads to this inflammation throughout the whole body?
Sure. So your gut is full of bacteria.
Right. Trillions of them.
Yeah, and some parts of those bacteria, like LPS,
Uh-huh.
your immune system sees them as a threat.
Okay.
So normally that mucus layer and the tight junctions we talked about, they prevent too much LPS from getting into your blood.
Okay.
But when the barrier is weak, more LPS can sneak through,
Oh.
and that triggers your immune system.
Okay.
And that constant low-level immune response
Hmm.
can lead to things like insulin resistance, weight gain,
Okay.
and other metabolic problems.
So it's not just about having the right bacteria, it's about keeping them in the right place.
Exactly. Location, location, location.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, it's interesting you mentioned that the mucus layer, it's not the same thickness everywhere in your gut.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like it's thicker in some places than others.
Right. So it tends to be thicker in the large intestine,
Okay.
where there are way more bacteria.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like extra protection there against that endotoxemia. But then in the small intestine, the mucus layer is thinner.
Okay.
And that's where you can have problems if there's an overgrowth of bacteria.
Right, like with SIBO.
Exactly.
Sure.
Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah.
So if you have too many bacteria in a place where the mucus is thin,
Uh-huh.
it can lead to problems.
More inflammation.
Yeah, and it's not just digestive issues either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can see symptoms all over the body.
Wow.
And, just to touch on it briefly, even changing your diet can affect this.
Okay, how's that?
So, like, if you switch to a very low-carb, high-fat diet,
Like keto.
yeah, some people actually experience a temporary increase in LPS levels in their blood
Oh, wow.
while their gut microbiome adjusts.
So it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening and they're like, maybe my Akkermansia levels are low, or maybe this is why I'm having some of these issues. What can they do?
Well, one thing you can do is actually get your gut microbiome tested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are stool tests you can do now. That can tell you what kinds of bacteria you have in your gut, including your Akkermansia levels.
So you can see how much Akkermansia you have?
Exactly. It can give you a really good picture of what's going on in there.
And then what if you find out you're low?
Yeah, so that's the big question, right?
Yeah, how do we get more?
So right now, directly using Akkermansia as a probiotic is a little bit tricky.
Okay.
The bacteria itself, it's kind of unstable.
Oh, okay.
So it's not super easy to make it into a supplement that's effective.
So no Akkermansia pills yet?
Not widely available, at least.
Okay.
But there are things you can do to encourage it to grow naturally in your gut.
Okay, so what are some of those strategies?
So one thing that's been studied is pomegranate extract.
Oh, pomegranate.
Yeah, there's a specific type called PomX.
Okay.
And some research suggests that taking about a gram of this extract daily can help to increase Akkermansia levels.
Oh, wow. So another reason to eat pomegranate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Delicious and good for your gut.
Oh, no.
So extracts from bilberry and American cranberry. Those have also shown some benefits.
Okay. How so?
So these berries are high in polyphenols,
Mhm.
which are great for reducing inflammation,
Okay.
but they can also stimulate the production of short-chain fatty acids and mucin production.
Oh, so they're giving Akkermansia what it needs to grow.
Exactly. They're creating a good environment for it.
Like a prebiotic almost?
Yeah. You
Yeah?
can think of it that way.
Okay, what else?
So certain probiotics have also been shown to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
Specifically strains like Bifidobacterium, Lactis BPL1,
Okay.
and Lactobacillus plantarum, LP115.
So it's not just any probiotic.
Right, it's specific strains.
Okay.
And these strains have been shown to increase Akkermansia levels, but also improve insulin sensitivity, lower blood glucose, and even reduce visceral fat.
Wow, that's amazing.
It shows you the power of these specific strains.
Yeah, so you really got to pay attention to the strain.
Absolutely. Each one is unique.
And what about diet in general?
Yeah, so diet plays a role too.
How's...
Some research suggests that gluten can actually be harmful to Akkermansia.
Oh, wow.
So reducing gluten might be helpful for some people.
Okay.
And then on the other hand, ketogenic diets,
Uh-huh.
while they can sometimes reduce the overall diversity of bacteria in your gut,
Okay.
they've actually been observed to increase Akkermansia levels in some people.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how complex this all is.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about supplements. We've talked about diet.
Yeah.
What about quality? Like, a lot of people are concerned about the quality of supplements.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
So what should people be looking for?
So there's a big difference between just a general extract and a branded ingredient,
Okay.
like the Pomax pomegranate extract we talked about,
Right.
or the BPL1 probiotic strain.
Uh-huh.
Those branded ingredients, they usually have a lot of research behind them.
Okay.
So you know they're safe and they're effective.
So it's worth looking for those specific names. And what about the manufacturing process? Like, how do we know that a supplement is high quality?
So reputable companies will have really strict quality control measures in place
Okay.
at every step of the way.
What does that look like?
So it starts with documentation.
Okay.
So every raw material that comes in, they have a certificate of analysis.
Okay.
And then they do all these checks.
Like what?
They check the appearance, the smell, the taste. They verify the weight, and they do safety screenings.
Wow. So it's not just like, oh, a box showed up, let's throw it in the mix.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
And then they do lab analysis
Okay.
to confirm the identity and the purity of every ingredient.
Okay.
So if it doesn't meet their standards, they reject it.
That makes sense.
And then during production, they do microbiological testing
Okay.
on every batch
Okay.
to make sure there are no harmful bacteria or anything like that.
Gotcha. So they're making sure it's safe.
Exactly. And they also do testing on the surfaces and in the air in the factory
Oh, wow.
to make sure everything is clean and safe.
Wow. That's really thorough.
Yeah, they really go above and beyond.
And what about allergens?
So for products that might contain allergens, they do specific testing after they clean the equipment
Okay.
to prevent cross-contamination.
That's good because a lot of people have allergies these days.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so they're doing all this testing.
Yeah.
And then before anything is sold, they have to make sure that all the ingredients are approved.
Right. They have to be legally allowed for consumption.
Okay.
And there are organizations like FEPAD that help companies stay up to date on those regulations.
Okay, so there's a lot of checks and balances before a supplement even gets to the store.
Exactly. A lot of hoops to jump through.
And then what happens after it leaves the factory? How do we know it's still good?
So high-quality supplements will have storage instructions on the label,
Okay.
like the temperature and the humidity.
Mm-hmm.
And for some products like liquids or some probiotics, they might have a shorter shelf life once you open them. So you have to use them within a certain amount of time.
That makes sense.
And the packaging is important too.
Okay.
You want something that protects the product from light and moisture.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of companies will use dark glass bottles.
Okay.
And there's also a big push towards sustainability now.
Yeah.
So some companies are using compostable packaging.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's good for the environment.
And what about those expiration dates?
Yeah, so those are determined by stability testing.
Okay.
So they basically see how long the product stays good under different conditions.
Okay.
And then they set an expiration date based on that.
So it's all backed by science.
Exactly.
So it sounds like there's a difference between a company that makes their own products
Yeah.
versus a company that just sells products that other companies make.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's more control when you make it yourself.
Right. If you control the whole process,
Yeah.
you can make sure that the quality is high at every step.
Which means a better product for the consumer.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's really helpful information. Let's kind of bring it all together.
Okay.
What's the key takeaway from our deep dive on Akkermansia?
And so I think the main thing to remember is that Akkermansia muciniphila is a really important bacteria for your gut health.
Okay.
And it plays a big role in maintaining that intestinal barrier,
Right.
which affects your metabolism and your overall well-being.
Yeah, and we saw how low levels of Akkermansia are linked to a lot of common health problems.
Exactly. It's definitely something to pay attention to.
So what's one thing people can do?
So while we don't have Akkermansia supplements readily available yet,
Right.
there are things you can do to support its growth naturally.
Okay.
So things like eating pomegranate and certain berries
Uh-huh.
and choosing targeted probiotic strains.
Uh-huh.
Those can make a difference.
So it's all about supporting our gut health.
Exactly.
Okay, so one last thing.
Yeah.
What's something that people can kind of ponder after this deep dive?
So if one tiny bacteria like Akkermansia can have such a big impact on our health, what other amazing things are hiding in our gut microbiome?
Yeah.
What other secrets are waiting to be discovered?
That's a great question. I think we're just scratching the surface.
I think so too.
It's really exciting.
It is. There's so much more to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a whole world in there.
Literally a whole world.
Yeah, and it's impacting our health in so many ways.
And we're just starting to understand it.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. I've learned a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's always fun to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
See you next time.
Bye.